In this video, we are going over the test review. The first question, we are given a system of equations. If we're given a system of equations and it is not in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where y is by itself, if we're given a system where neither of them are in slope-intercept, our best bet is to go ahead and eliminate or solve by elimination. When we're solving by elimination, we are comparing the coefficients of the like terms, which is 3x and understood 1x, and the 5y and the 2y, and seeing if there's any inverse or identical terms. What do I mean when I say identical or inverse terms? Identical terms mean if we were looking at the x like terms, we would be looking at positive 3x, and the second equation would have exactly 3x, which is identical. Now inverse. Inverse terms means one of them would be positive, so positive x, and then if we wanted an inverse term in the second equation, it'd be negative 3x. Now, we obviously don't have identical or inverse for the 3 and the 1 because the 1 is definitely not negative or the positive 3. The 2 is definitely not identical to the 5 for the y's, and it's not negative 5. So we do not have identical or inverse terms. So we have to multiply one of the equations or both equations to get it where they have identical or inverse terms. Hopefully you can see that you can multiply 1 to get to the 3. That way we would have identical. So we're going to multiply this whole second equation by 3. If we do this, we're going to get 3 times 1x, which is 3x. 3 times 2y, which is 6y. Then 3 times 6, which is 18. Now, I'm going to erase this subtraction so I have a little bit more room. So I'm going to rewrite that first equation we haven't done anything to yet, so we can line it up so we know what we're doing. Now, do we have any identical or inverse terms? Yes, we have a positive 3 and positive 3. So we're going to subtract due to them being identical. Now 3x minus 3x is 0, so it cancels out. Then we have 5 minus 6, which is negative 1y, equals 15 minus 18, which is negative 3. We are not done. We have to get a positive 1y or just positive y. So we've got to divide by negative 1 on both sides. Divide by negative 1 on both sides. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1. So y equals negative 3 divided by negative 1. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then we have 3 divided by 1, which is simply 3. Now, we can stop there because looking at our answer choices, 0, 3, 0, 5, 5, 0, and obviously D is not the answer choice, or I wouldn't have written all over it, but 6, 0. The only answer choice that has Y as 3 is A. But let's check it. Let's see if our X value is going to be 0. We take our Y value and substitute it back in to one of the original equations. So we have x plus 2y equals 6. Instead of y, we now have 3. We distribute. x plus 6 equals 6. Minus 6 on both sides because it's positive. These cancel out. I'm left with x equals 0, which checks out. So the answer is A. Now, for 2. Compared it to the first one was in standard form. Both equations in number 2 are in slope-intercept form. So we can solve by graphing these. So we're going to take our graph paper. I've got little printed off ones. And we're going to start by identifying our slope and our y-intercept. So our slope is always the coefficient of the x. So we have 2, and because we're going to graph it, we want it in a fraction form. So we're going to divide by positive 1. Our y-intercept is going to be that positive 5. Our second equation has an understood 1 as the coefficient of x. So our slope is going to be positive 1. We want it in fraction form, so we have 1 over 1. And our y-intercept is positive 6. So going back to our slopes, positive 2 in the numerator tells us to go up 2, and in the denominator, positive tells us to go to the right. Positive 1 in the numerator goes up, positive in the denominator goes right. So now we're going to graph these. So our 5 is our y-intercept, positive 5. So we're going to go to y-intercept, or y-axis, go to positive 5. Then we've got a slope of 2, 1, so up 1, 2, to the right 1. Or going the opposite way, down 1, 2, to the left 1. And there is our first line. Then we've got our second line, which is y-intercept 6. We've got up 1 to the right 1. So there's an intersection, or we can go down 1 to left 1, down 1 to the left 1. We can keep going up here. So there is our second line. Now, when we were counting our slope, up 1 to the right 1, we ran into our intersection of our 2 lines. So what is the order pair of this intersection? It is 1, 7. This is the solution of our equations, our system of equations, due to the fact that a solution of system of equations is the intersection of the 2 equations. So going back to our question, what is the x-coordinate of the solution to the system? Well, here is our x value, our 1. Here is our y value, our 7. So we're looking for the x, so it is 1. Number 3, a system of equations is shown below. So we are having to solve it again. We're looking to see if there's any identical or inverse terms. There's not. You can either change the 9 and the 3 to get the same number, or the 5 and the understood -1 by multiplication. I'm going to multiply the second equation to get the 5y and the -1y the same number. So I'm going to multiply by 5. And I'm going to get 15x minus 5y equals 20. Then I'm going to rewrite the first one so I can line it up. Plus 5 y equals 8. Now looking at my new equation with my first equation that I did not change. Do I have inverse or identical terms? I have inverse. I have a positive 5, then a negative 5. So because I want them to eliminate or become 0, I'm going to add the equations together. Going to add because I've got 5 plus negative 5, or rewritten as 5 minus 5. That gives me 0. Then I have 9 plus 15, which is 24, x. And then I've got 8 plus 20, which is 28. So 28, and then we're going to divide by 24, divide by 24. 24 divided by 24 cancels out because it becomes 1. I have x equals 28 divided by 24, which is 1.16, and so on and so forth. This keeps on repeating. So we can keep this as a fraction and plug it back in. So we are going to plug it back in to 3x minus y equals 4. Remember, you're plugging it back into the original. So we're going to have this repeating decimal, and if you use your calculator to get the decimal, you're just going to go in there and multiply by 3. So 3 times that repeating decimal minus y equals 4. So we're going to multiply by 3. And we get a decimal of 3.49 repeating minus y equals 4. We're going to minus this 3.49 repeating on both sides. And I get negative y equals 0.5. And then I divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. Negative 1's cancel out. I'm left with y equals negative 0.5. Now, yes, I kept it in decimal form, but what is another way to write negative 0.5? Negative 1/2. Now our question asked, where are we at? We're at number 3. Our question asks, so what is the y value of the solution to the system? So y value is the last thing we found, which was negative 1/2. Now, for number 4, I know that it's going to be cramped a little bit, but looking at the system that's given, do we have any identical or inverse terms? We have identical. We have a understood 1, and we have one y's. One set of 1 y's. So we're going to subtract to get rid of them. So 2 minus negative 1y, or 1x. So 2 minus negative 1 plus gives us 3x. Then we have 1 minus 1, which is 0. Then we have 9 minus 6, which gives us 3. We have multiplication in between, so that's why we're dividing to get rid of the 3. 3's cancel out. We're left with x equals 3 divided by 3 is simply 1. Now we're substituting that 1 back in to one of the original equations. I would choose the second one because it looks easier. So I want, of the original ones is negative x plus y equals 6. I have negative, instead of x, I'm putting the 1 in, plus y equals 6. I'm going to add the 1 to both sides to cancel out and get y by itself. So 6 plus 1 gives me 7. I'm putting these two together, so the x value goes first. So 1 goes first, that one doesn't have a 1 first, that one doesn't have a 1 first, and D doesn't have a 1 first. So it has to be A just to check. My y value is 7, y value 7. My answer is A.